Oh my gosh, I love that question. That's one of my favorite questions I've been asked. What's your love letter to a reader? My love letter to a reader is a story about ultimately writing a two-book story duology. Your characters have a pretty significant arc that continues on throughout both of the books. And so my love story would be a story about redemption and whether it's possible after somebody has done, whether redemption and change is possible after somebody has done some really horrible things, and what ultimately could be the catalyst to change somebody's entire worldview when it is something completely different from your own and has been so warped over time based on basically brainwashing or indoctrination.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, the author podcast where we get to meet great authors from around the world, which is fun because I'm in Canada and I get to travel virtually and talk to some of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. So today is no exception to that. You're going to enjoy this author, multiple books for you to fall in love with, great storyteller, and supermom. Let's just say supermom as well. We can add that to the list. Claire,
I love it.
Welcome to Living the Next Chapter. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Okay, it's one thing to be an author and be very proud of that, but something a little bit more important than that is being a mom and doing all the mom things. And I love seeing your smile when you talk about mom things. Tell us about your beautiful little family, and you have a really recent addition to the family as well, which is really cool. But tell us a little bit about your kiddos. Come on.
Yes, I'd love to. So I have 3 kids. The youngest joined our family on June. And I have a son who is 5, a daughter who is 3, and then, like I said, our little newest addition. So life is pretty crazy. And I always tell people that being an author is a marathon. And so it has been really important to me to have them give me perspective throughout this very long journey. Perspective and joy. Perspective, joy, and newfound wisdom, we can call it.
From an author's perspective, how important is reading in your home with your kids?
Oh, it's so important to read with them. I actually have my son's book that we're reading with him right here. For everyone who can't see, since there's no video, it's The Wild Robot by Peter Brown, which was recently made into a movie. And
nice.
Yes, I grew up with my parents reading aloud to me until, maybe I was in like 6th, 7th grade. And so that is a very integral part of our routine. Going to the library is something we all do together. So we love to share in books and stories together.
Okay. Tell me more about that book for your son, Wild Robot. What's that one about?
Oh, have you heard of the movie?
No, I haven't. I got to go see it now.
Oh, it's so good. It's basically about a robot who is on an island with wild animals.
Oh.
And the robot, she finds a little egg, and in the egg is a duck, and she basically raises the little duck. And it's just a moving, beautiful story. And I think it's pretty timely now, about like how technology is essentially integrated in every part of our life. And so, who knows what our kids are going to grow up with in the next 10, 15, 50 years.
Right.
So stories like this are important. I feel like they're going to be the new classics, the new Charlotte's Web,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's screen free, which is another bonus to have these books, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then just something about holding a book and, all of that. I think that's pretty special as parents. We can shape the future of our kids' lives by having those moments with our kids.
Yeah.
When I look back, like I'm an empty nester. I would have loved to have another night of reading a book at bedtime and all that stuff. So I'm living through you, and I'm excited for you that you have this. It's good.
Yeah. And it's fun to see the evolution as well, because, we used to, obviously we read like all of the picture books, and there's so many lessons in those as well that are so important for your children. But then now we've moved on, like with my son, who's going into kindergarten this year, to those chapter books, like we talked about. And so kind of seeing how he is able to absorb the story and reading comprehension, so like understand what's actually happening and be able to discuss it with you. Such important lessons.
It's nice when you can have a conversation with your kids. Right.
It is.
Right.
It
Because
is.
when my kids are little, they get frustrated, and I'm like, use your words. Like,
I know.
tell me what you're feeling. I can't read your mind. You got to tell me. Right. Use your words. I always walk around the house. Use your words. Use your words. That was kind of my little thing, my little mantra with my kids.
Yeah, and just even, history. We've been reading the Magic Treehouse books as well, which are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And that basically the treehouse, this magic treehouse transports two young kids back in time to many different places all over the world. And so, one of the ones that we read recently was they went back to ancient Rome, and they were there for the Olympic Games. And then, but then women weren't allowed to participate or attend. And so, having that kind of conversation with my son was really interesting and important already, to just kind of, because he obviously didn't understand why that was the case. And, how women have been treated differently during different decades of our lives.
Interesting. That's a good lesson to learn at a young age. It's good.
I know.
Excellent. Books are powerful. Would you agree?
Books are powerful. Stories are powerful. And it's one of the most important ways that you can teach empathy and make people feel things,
Yeah. Is that why you're an author? Is you like to teach people things?
I don't think that's why I'm an author, but I think that's why I wrote the most recent stories that I did.
Okay.
So it's definitely an exploration of empathy, and in a time where I think we've become very numb to a lot of the violence that's become so prevalent in our world.
It becomes a platform to share a message, whatever that is, or however you want to share that. But it creates an audience around you, and people are reading the book for the story. They want to be entertained. But I love when an author kind of puts something underlying in the story. It's kind of a message or a thought or a belief or something that kind of shapes people, right? Just like your son reading these books shapes his opinion about the history of women in sports, for example, and all that. Like, there's a little message in there that just kind of underlies what you're trying to write as an author. I like that.
Absolutely. And I heard at a writer's conference I went to 2 years ago, one of the panelists was talking about how being an author and writing the stories that we do is a way for us to process some of our biggest fears and lives. And I think that is so true. And I recently, my second book, the final installment of my duology, came out at the end of April. And it was very much centered. It was obviously the second to the first. And it really took the characters to essentially a dystopian Chicago. And that world was something that I built, asking myself the questions of how could we get here in today's society, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So did you purposely write the books as a duology, or did it kind of develop after you wrote the first one? You're like, there's a second one right here waiting for me.
That's a great question. I intended actually for the series to be a trilogy. So I was expecting to write 3 books. But by the time I finished the first, finished the first and got the first published, it had been about 7-8 years. And so as I started writing the second, what I was struggling with the most was that at that point, and at the time that the second book came out, it had been almost 10 years that I've been working on this story. And I was ready to do something else. And even though I loved the characters and at that point felt as if I knew the characters very well, I felt other stories pulling me in different directions. And so I left the second book. There's a lot of closure, but I also left it a little open-ended. So if I want to come back to it, I can. But I was I was ready to move on a little bit. Yeah.
What was the initial spark to write the book in the first place?
The initial spark was, like I had mentioned a little bit earlier in our conversation, how mass violence is just becoming so prevalent in our society, whether it be places of worship, concerts, movies, theaters. I felt and still feel as if all of these sacred places, schools, are no longer really safe in a way that they were before. And I was really starting to question not how the violence was happening, but why the violence was happening and what was compelling these individuals to feel as if they should commit these acts, these atrocious, horrific acts. And it started as an exploration for me. I interviewed an ex neo-Nazi skinhead, and he at that point had already written one of my main characters who is a terrorist, and I really used that interview to better explore and better understand my own character, and
Okay.
also ensure that I was representing him accurately and his experience accurately.
So how do you track down that discussion and interview? That isn't like you find on Craigslist. I don't know. How do you do that?
Oh, yeah. Put out an ad.
Yeah. Okay.
No, at that time, I worked for Google in Chicago, and
Okay.
we often had people come in to do talks at the office. And Christian Piccolini, who is the person who I'm referring to, he had been a part of, like I said, a white supremacist organization. And he had, of course, since left and started a nonprofit organization that was focused on extracting extremists from their organizations and reassimilating them back into society. And so I was fascinated by it, and I knew his wife, and I asked if I could reach out to him and contact him. And I read his book and then ended up, writing interview questions based on the book. And he's a fantastic human. He's done a lot of TED Talks and, like I said, written his own books and been featured on like 60 Minutes and things like that.
Okay. Well, if I don't ask this question, I'm going to get hate mail. We have this opinion or this vision of people who work at Google, and we're like, I never met one in real life. It's kind of like the Men in Black movie type of thing, where they're like they exist, but we're not allowed to know about it. What kind of things did you do at Google? I'm really curious.
I didn't do anything too crazy, unfortunately. Nothing that would excite you too much. I was in sales. So I was in charge of bringing in all the money that allowed the cool people to do all of the really cool stuff. But when I first started at Google, they take you to Mountain View to do like your orientation there, which is where Google's headquartered. And I'll never forget, one of the people in my group worked for Google X. And so he was basically hired on with no understanding of like what he was going to be working on at that time, or like what project he was going to be doing. So
that's an interview. I'm going to interview for a job I can't tell
imagine?
you about. Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Okay.
I do think that as at the time, like I started working at Google, I mean, at this point, back in 2014, 2015. So it's been 10 years. And the company's changed a lot since then.
Yeah.
So, and it's grown a lot. So I don't think it's as uncommon anymore as it might have used to be. So, yeah.
Okay. It sounds like a very interesting place. As we kind of see on the news or in the people talking about what they believe it's like to work there. But to have somebody who actually worked there, it's like, okay, well, I have to ask. Right?
Yeah, of course. When I first started, Google was how do I talk about my relationship with Google? It was a big part of my identity. And I think a big part of that too was because I started it I started working there when I was so young.
Yeah.
I was 25. And so a lot of my friends worked there. Larry and Sergey were still the CEOs of Google. It wasn't even Alphabet at the time. So there's just been so many things that have happened to the company that have made it more corporate and, to be honest, less unique in my opinion. I think there's a lot of other companies now that rival it in terms of all of the great fancy perks that they offer, whether it be the food or the great healthcare, the benefits, the maternity leave and the paternity leave. And I do really think that Google helped set those standards, but I don't think that Google has done a great job keeping up with how some of the other companies have progressed even further in those
Yeah.
areas,
Right.
especially now that they're so tied to like earnings and
Yeah.
their stakeholder, who's invested in the company. And I saw that as I left. I saw how at that time they were doing pretty massive layoffs and how those were handled. And I really came to the realization that Google is a corporation and they don't care about you.
Yep.
And you shouldn't care about, you don't owe them anything. You
Yeah.
work for them and you need to do what's best for you and for your life because you're very disposable to them.
Yeah.
So,
So you move
not
on
to
from
sound too
that.
jaded and cynical.
Yeah. No, no. Well, I think there's a lot of people, no matter what company you work for, you're going to come across some of that. I think right, what
Absolutely.
we do. You
Yeah.
move on from that.
Yeah.
Kind of where did you go after that?
Well, I always saw myself staying in Chicago and working for Google, honestly, up until like this age where my kids were roughly this age.
Okay.
And, where my son is about to go into kindergarten and into school. But like so many other people, COVID just changed everything.
Yeah.
And right as I was coming back from maternity leave with my son, the whole office shut down and the whole city started shutting down. And so we had just renewed our lease on our apartment in Chicago. There was so much uncertainty, there was so much unknown. And we went back to stay with my parents for a month and in Indiana, which is where we live now. And we expected to go back and we never went back. We stayed with my parents for over a year and my mom helped take care of my son at the time. And we came to the point where we were starting to make, do we move back to Indiana? Do we go back to Chicago? We didn't know what the return to office policy was going to be. At that time, we didn't know what the vaccine requirements were going to be. We didn't know if there were going to be vaccines available. And ultimately, we made a decision because both my parents and my husband's parents are here. And we were so much happier here.
Yeah.
And we finally made a decision, even with the unknowns of our jobs, about what was going to be best for ourselves and for our family for the very first time.
Okay.
And it shouldn't be revolutionary, but I think it was for a lot of people. And yeah, that's what ultimately led us back here. And eventually, a couple of years later, when they did start to require people to go back to office, I wasn't really willing to commute to Chicago, nor did I have any interest. And so it was a big reason why I left.
So then how does authorship fit into your new surroundings with family and your new growing family? Where did the idea of putting authorship into your schedule as a mom and a parent, how did all that fit in then?
Well, that's such a good question. How did that fit in? I think that authorship was a dream of mine that I had to explore and try. And I came to the point too, not only was I being, I was being asked to come back into the office at Google more regularly, but I just had my daughter. I was working a demanding full-time job. And then I was also trying to get my book published and publish my book. And, and I knew the book was coming out. And so at that point in time, and so I made the decision to leave Google as well because I knew I couldn't do all three things.
Yeah.
I learned that I learned that you really can't even do two things really well. I even feel like I struggle with the balance always, quote unquote balance. And I hate that word. I think I told that to you.
Yeah.
Because I believe that really exists. Like, I don't think I can be a really good parent. And then even when I was working on the book and trying to get the book out there and doing all the book promotion, I don't think I could have done that even really well. And I was constantly trying to mesh the two together. But at least being an author has allowed me to be home and has given me flexibility in that regard with them.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have been as successful as I was if I hadn't given it a shot and given it my all, and put everything I could into promoting the book and treating it like a job and treating it like a business. And so I think I'm still trying to figure it out is a very long-winded way of me saying that.
Have you ever thought about where you would be if you weren't an author today?
No, wow. I haven't thought. No, I haven't because I didn't look back.
Okay.
I
Oh,
didn't look
good.
back after I
Okay.
left Google, and I didn't regret ever leaving.
Okay.
There were certain things I missed. I missed making the type of money that I did. I missed that and the kind of the luxury that afforded me. But no, I didn't look back on anything else and miss it. Not for
Because
one second.
when all those big changes, there's a change of
Yeah.
identity happening for you,
Yeah.
right? You're seen as the person who works at Google. You're the
Yeah.
parent. These are all different identities for you. So
Yeah.
authorship is now part of your identity then.
Yeah. It is. It is. Yeah. And I think that after leaving Google and seeing how much of my identity was tied to that corporate job, it made me realize I never want that to happen again. And so I'd so much rather my identity be tied with authorship and my dream and creating stories that move people and could potentially change people's lives or their perspective. And it makes me very proud to also show my children, look what I created and look what I willed into this world, and I made it happen. And I love that my identity is that now, and it gives me a lot of excitement also with the next book that I'm already thinking about writing, and I'm excited to start.
Okay, so we have authors listening to the show, possibly a parent who
Yeah.
may be in a similar path that
Yeah.
you've gone down. And maybe they're looking at you going, yeah, okay. Well, Claire's got multiple books. She's doing it well. I'm just starting. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can juggle all this with my kids and my identity. I'm wrestling with this. If you were listening to this podcast while you were working at Google and the idea of a book was new to you, what would have been helpful to hear from an author talking on this show that could have maybe given you a little bit more motivation or that spark earlier on? What would have been helpful to hear?
Another amazing question. What would have been helpful to hear? That I think what immediately comes to mind and comes to my gut is what I said earlier about this is it's a marathon. I mean, anything to do with writing and publishing, if that's what you want to do with your work, is truly, it just takes a long time. And I have had a lot of people after the book came out who said, how did you do it? How did you do it with kids? Like I can't even read one book with my kids. And Lord, do I know how that feels. And the things that I tell them the main thing that I tell them is that I started writing this book when I didn't have kids, and I wrote basically the whole thing and rewrote it. And that was my sole focus outside of work. It was what I worked on every single day, every single weekend. And I think that if you're trying to do that while balancing things like a family and another job, just give yourself a lot of grace, because it's not something that I did at this phase of my life. I was able to publish the book at that phase of my life, and that nearly killed me. And it was another reason why I made the decision to quit my job. And even at the time that I did publish the book, I'd already written at least 50 to 100 pages of the second book. So, it's really, really hard. And you're constantly, just maybe you can work on some pages one day a week, maybe on a weekend, and start there. Just start, and it doesn't have to be every day. People are like, oh, write, 5,000 words a day, write 2,000 words a day. Do what you can, and those slow steps will eventually get you somewhere.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll finally say about that is that my husband is an amazing partner, and I couldn't have done this without him if I wanted to have a family, because he took the kids. I would be gone for hours at a time at the library. I would disappear working on this book, and he allowed that to happen while I had a family. So having a supportive partner who supports this dream that you have is really important too.
Yeah. So have a community around you. That's really important. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay. To be a husband, it could be, grandparents, it could be friends, it could be, aunts, uncles, whoever. So yeah, absolutely.
So one thing I have found when I talk to authors on this show is writers like to write. And being a parent, I'm just curious, have you ever even considered writing like a little book for your kids that maybe other parents would be like, I want to read that to my kids? Like, would that be like a little side thing for you?
Absolutely. I would love to do that someday. And even reading some of these chapter books, these, young I don't know, you don't call this middle grade because it's not middle grade, but some of these books for younger kids that are a little bit more like the Magic Treehouse books, like I mentioned. I would love to do something like that, but it's a totally different kind of publication process. So maybe one day.
Okay. A storybook where your kids are the characters in the story would be awesome. Like,
I know.
right? It's like, that's me right there. This is me. That's my sister. Like, come on.
Know.
Right?
I know. And it could even be, my husband told me he was listening or doing research on Bluey, the TV show. And apparently each episode is based off of like one of the creators' experiences. And I would love to do that, right? You know, stories with my kids as main characters based on like actual things that happened, you know?
That'd be so much fun.
I know it would. It would. Yeah.
I know it's totally outside of what you're writing, but I just, as you love reading to your kids, it'd be kind of cool to have that legacy for them, right?
Totally. Even if nothing came of it, you know?
I would like to see that book beside their bed while they're sleeping in their bed at night. And just have that picture in my head, right?
I love that idea. You're going to manifest that happening. We could even write it together, you know?
Come on, right? I would love to have that.
My list of to-dos, Dave.
Okay, come on, just add it to the list. You got lots of time.
That hard?
Right? If you're not sure how to do it, you could just Google it. They'll tell you, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's a nice tie back. I like that. That's good.
I know. AI these days, too.
I like it. Yeah, right? Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to put that up there because I think that's really kind of cool. So what does having a book or multiple books mean for you as far as your legacy as an author?
I'm just extremely proud. Right. And I think, again, kind of like I said earlier in our conversation, that the story is really important story and it's very timely. And it examines a woman who, a young woman who I grew up reading a lot of young adult fiction. And I think that the situations that they're placed in at those ages, whether it's like a 16-year-old to an 18-year-old in some of the young adult novels, the woman the main character in my story is about 27. And I think at that time you face a different type of crisis where you're kind of supposed to start figuring life out. And then you come to the realization that no one has life figured out. And what does that mean? And what does that mean when you're starting your career and you're feeling pulled in different directions to also realize that, well, maybe this career wasn't what I wanted to do.
Right.
So anyway, this is me saying again in a very long-winded way that it kind of looks at where I was in my life at that time when I was writing that character. And then at the same time, it also examines someone who's completely different in the terrorist who I said earlier.
Yeah.
And how those two interact, I think, is a really important story that needs to be heard.
So jumping back to the identity piece again, you have the identity of being an author. Your kids have the identity of their mom as an author. Yeah. Your husband and partner in life can go to work and talk to his friends and family. My wife's an author. So that's like, it's bigger than just you yourself having the identity of an author, right? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It is. And I tell my husband that he has a quota. He has to get out there and sell books.
Come on. Right? There you go.
Yeah. No, but you're exactly right. And I don't think my daughter and obviously my little newborn definitely don't know what's going on with it. But my son, who's going into kindergarten, does. And he starts to have, and especially because he's seen the book in bookstores. And so I think that's starting to click with him. And as he's starting to read more books that have more words and less pictures and kind of the story that comes with those types of books, he's starting to understand a little bit more about what I do. And and like I said, my husband, I think he's just always been he's believed in this story just as much as I have. And again, I couldn't have made it and done it without him because there's so many times when you just want to give up.
Right.
It's important to have somebody by your side who won't let you.
Did you have any other author buddies, friends in the community of authors that kind of were in touch with you or working with you alongside of you while you wrote?
I did. And I always tell new authors, that's my number one piece of advice, is to find a writer's group and go to writers' conferences because it allows you to meet new authors and
Right.
authors outside of your community. And it's just such a wonderful experience to be surrounded by people who share the same dream and passion as you and who understand. Because as much as your friends can be, you can be close with your friends or your family and they can ask you about it. They just don't understand it unless they're going through it. And so you find people who do in those types of places and environments. And that's how I met the two people who have been in my writers group for throughout this whole process. And they've made me a better writer. They've made me a better editor. I've learned so much through them, and I love them dearly now. So yes,
Good.
critical part of the process.
For the readers, then, as they come to your books for the first time, I kind of like to frame it in this context for them. What is your love letter to the reader about your books? So that if you met them at a coffee shop or on the street, you just have a short period of time to kind of explain the big idea of why these books exist in the world. What's your love letter to a reader? What do you want to tell them?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. That's one of my favorite questions I've been asked. What's your love letter to a reader? My love letter to a reader is a story about ultimately writing a two-book story duology. Your characters have a pretty significant arc that continues on throughout both of the books.
Right.
And so my love story would be a story about redemption and whether it's possible after somebody has done, whether redemption and change is possible after somebody has done some really horrible things, and what ultimately could be the catalyst to change somebody's entire worldview when it is something completely different from your own and has been so warped over time based on basically brainwashing or indoctrination.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Does that give enough?
That's good. What about some of the main characters who are going to be introduced at the beginning of the story? What do we need to know about them? A little backstory so we can kind of like give us the advance kind of to the front of the line as a reader, as we won't have to kind of discover it over a period of time. We kind of get a little sneak peek of who these characters are.
Oh, a sneak peek. Okay, well, the story is about a young woman named Flynn, like I mentioned, who works for a company called Magnetic, which if you have worked in the Google Chicago office, you'll find a lot of similarities there. So she's a recruiter for that company, and she is taken hostage by a domestic terrorist organization, and specifically Wolf, who is the terrorist who I mentioned. And this organization uses her to infiltrate her company and ultimately tried to take over the city of Chicago. And Wolf is a very troubled individual who is extremely unlikable and frankly does evil, horrific things. And throughout the story, I try to peel back the layers into who he is and why he is the way he is. And I do that using Flynn and their relationship as it continues to kind of unfold and as they continue to try to manipulate each other to get what they want.
Fast-paced story, like a lot of action,
Very
a lot of moving, moves quick. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of action. I wrote the book exactly like I like to read books, which is page turner, a lot of action, a lot of dimension to the character, so very character driven, chemistry. There's a love triangle, so there's something there for everybody.
All right. Any similarities to another style of book or another author that would be like, it's kind of, because I'm a musician, right? I'm like, well, this band I really love, if I'm introducing it to you, I'm like, well, it's kind of a mix between Metallica and Ariana Grande. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. That's a weird combo, but it kind of gives you a sense of what the book or what the song is like. Do you have any kind of like comparisons
comps?
That might?
Yes, we call that comps in our industry. And it's very important for when you're trying to get an agent and get representation because they want to see that the book can sell.
There you go.
But yes, I would say so. A lot of people compare it to, and this is obviously a much, older book, but they compare it to Hunger Games, but with older characters and in a different kind of setting. So I was a huge fan of the Hunger Games and was definitely influenced by Suzanne Collins' writing and her storytelling. So I would say it's almost like a Hunger Games meets a Homeland, the TV
Okay.
show.
All right.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
good. For the
Hmm.
reader's perspective, that gives them a point of reference, right? They're like, oh,
Absolutely.
I know someone who
I would like
loves
that.
those
Yep.
shows, right? It's like, oh, they're going to love
Yeah.
this book. I see on your website there's a button that says listen on Spotify, listen on Audible, and
Huh?
listen on Apple. What the heck is that? What is that listen button? What is that?
Oh, it's just it leads you to where you can download the book on basically and the first book. The second book the narrator's still working on, but for
Ooh.
those who can only listen to books via audio, that there you go. I am one of those people who I don't listen to audiobooks enough, but for so many moms, for example, or dads
Mhm.
who are always on the go or commuting, that's some of the only ways they can consume books. So,
Okay.
yes.
Anything special in the audiobook that you were able to do on an audio version that you really couldn't do on paper?
No, I would say a lot of people ask me if I narrate the books, and I say absolutely not. Well, you don't really understand how difficult of a process that is until you actually work with a narrator and see what they have to do and how they have to bring it to life, especially
Right.
when they're trying to not act out, but act out,
Yeah.
voice act different characters. I can never in a million years. And so my narrator is local, actually. So I know him and he's wonderful and does it really masterfully. So it's a great experience if you do love audiobooks. And I think you love him as a narrator.
Yeah. Where I work, I'm allowed to listen to podcasts and audiobooks. So if I find an audiobook, you get to keep me
Oh.
company. And I'm like, I'm in.
Oh,
So yeah, I'm
you have
looking
to
forward
listen
to
to
that.
it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any timeline on the release of the second book as an audio version? Is that
I'm
soon? Or?
hoping it will hopefully be, we're going to August, the end of August.
Oh, really? Okay. Soon
Yeah.
then. Okay.
Yeah. Soon. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is it weird? Is it weird to hear your book?
It was really weird to hear it.
Okay.
And it was one of the first times when I first heard it and first heard the chapters, I kind of fell in love with my book all over again. And that was something that was, I don't like to I haven't reread my book. I haven't, I don't like to open it because I feel very self-conscious and like I'm going to find something in the pages that I would have wanted to do differently. So I really try not to do it often. And so listening to it again made me really proud. Yeah.
Right. It's a different context to it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I wrote this.
Yeah. So these are my
Cool.
words. These came from me, right? Yeah. No, that's really cool. Okay. You mentioned that there's other things in the works in the future. I want to wrap up here in a moment, but what kind of things? And it's Living the Next Chapter is the name of my podcast. So I got to ask, like how you're living your next chapter. Kind of, can you
Yeah.
give us a sense of what's coming down the road for you as an author?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So I am departing completely from the type of thriller that I wrote, obviously, with these two books, with The Rising Order and The New Order. And I am going to work on more of like a juicy drama with a little bit of a psychological thriller twist. So it's going to be called Golf Wives, and it's going to be about the wives of golfers.
Okay. Interesting.
I know. So I'm really looking forward to that because I think it's going to mirror a little bit more of my reality just in terms of being a mom and raising children and the social dynamics that come with certain types of environments. So I am very excited about it.
Will there be a golf cart chase in that book, maybe for action or?
Probably not that, but there
No.
might be some other fun things that I
Okay.
throw in there. Maybe a
All right.
murder or two, maybe some drugs, maybe some fraud. Who knows? But I'll find a way to spice it up.
A little cheating in golf, maybe too, or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
use some
good.
cheap
Come on.
money. Yeah.
All right. That's interesting. Okay. Well, we're going to tee that off. That'll be really fun when that comes. And yeah, I like that. This is good.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, so let's talk about your website a little bit before we go. I have it up on my screen while we're chatting. I'm seeing you. Is that you on a TV set? What is that picture that I'm seeing on your website? Come on.
Yes, that's me being featured by our local news station for both. I was on for both the first and the
Nice.
second book, and yeah,
You're famous.
yeah,
You're
I'm a big deal, Dave. I'm famous.
Wow. This is great. Awesome. Yeah, but tell us about your website. What are we going to find when we get there? I see your Instagram, your Facebook links are there as well, but tell us about your website.
Yes. So on my website, www.claireisenthal.com, you'll be able to find links to purchase both of my books, The Rising Order and The New Order. There will be a form in case you want to get in contact with me and email me. I love whenever I get emails from readers or, also like you mentioned, my social media handles are included as well. So you can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me on those forums as well. And I love it. I always love hearing about people who read the book and if it meant something to them. And yeah.
As we go out the door, I always try to encourage our listeners and readers to leave a great review when they buy your books.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what is meaningful from an author's perspective when you're reading a review? I see like great book, great author. I'm like, okay, well, we can do a little bit better than that, I think, as readers. What's meaningful for you to read when you see a review and they're 5 stars? I love this book. What's helpful to see on the screen from a reader reviewing your book?
Well, I've seen some reviews of my book that truly taught me something about the characters and the story, where I didn't even think about. I didn't think about them in that light, or I obviously have a very different interpretation of the characters and the story because I'm the one who's in it and I'm very close to it. So I've learned some things about lessons and themes that readers took away that I never thought of before. So I think sharing kind of what the book meant to you, or again, comps. So like if you loved this book, you'll love this. Things that will really entice other people to read it and check it out, I think is something that's really important. And like you mentioned, just even leaving a review, though, goes a really long way because it helps with your rankings. It helps with algorithms, especially with platforms like Amazon. So it's a really, really important thing to do. And it's always just so appreciated. Even if you don't like the book, why? It's almost more important to actually include, well, why didn't you like it, rather than just like leaving 1 to 2 stars and just kind of leaving it at that. Well, why didn't you like it? Why didn't it resonate with you?
Okay. Excellent. Claire, so glad to have you on.
Yeah.
You got to come back in the future as you work on new projects.
I'd love to. I'd love to.
Get an update on your amazing family and the kiddos and all that stuff too when you come back. I'd love to kind of know what's happening there.
I know.
And, kindergarten and then grade 12 goes very quick, by the way. So enjoy it.
Oh my gosh, I can't hear that.
Love it.
It's crazy. I love that, Dave, because so much happens in this phase of life. In terms of a year or 2 years, things can look really different. So I'd love to come back, and thank you so much for having me. It was such a wonderful conversation.
Excellent. And it's really exciting. Yeah. Everybody, The Rising Order and The New Order. If you need some order in your life, then here's 2 books to help you with that. You get yourself all ordered up. Claire, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.